The second stage, once we've got our community together, is doing the Greenprint. And this is really where I want to focus, because it really is bringing in science, bringing in information, making it presentable, creating a platform, and creating a table where everyone can sit, understand, and then come up with an informed decision and hopefully get to consensus. And if it's done right, it's a process that really allows you to deal with discord and disagreement and come out the other side with action. There are 5 pretty simple steps. Local goals, by that we mean water quality protection, ag land protection, scenic vistas, recreation. Those are the goals we're talking about. And then we need to do on a parcel by parcel basis. We're action oriented. We're talking about buying land here. We've got to understand what each parcel means in terms of those local goals. When we map it, the red areas are the ones that have the highest resource value relative to that goal. So whether it's water quality, connections to parks, ag land, transit-oriented development, parks, all of these can be mapped, and then you have an opportunity to then see what it looks like. We can't do everything. There are never enough resources to protect all the land and all the resources that communities want to protect. And therefore, we got to make decisions. We have to prioritize. And this system allows us to move from being reactive to being proactive, and allows us to weight the different areas. I'm going to talk more about this in a minute as to how we do that. But that weighting is absolutely critical, because you've got to come out the other side with a consensus around what the priorities are. Does drinking water matter more than scenic, and does that matter more than trails? And once you've done that, you can create alternative scenarios, again, using a very fluid mapping system, which is enormously helpful, to real-time show people what it looks like. And then ultimately, you've got to drive to consensus and come up with a design that people are willing to implement. One thing that we've really taken pride in is, because we work on a parcel-by-parcel basis, this is a tool that allows TPL and our stakeholders to really dig in and understand what the values are for each parcel, what is its habitat value, what's its water quality value, etc. And so you can really drill down. We actually got a recognition from ESRI a couple of years back for the quality of this particular tool. Not everyone gets to see parcel by parcel. We put it up on a website, but it's protected because this can be a very political situation, obviously. And when you're trying to buy these things, you don't want to get too much information out there. So once we've done the Greenprint, there are a lot of different ways that we can present that information. Strategy maps, profile reports, the lower left-hand side, and then also we put it up on the web in many of these situations to create if you will, a virtual workplace where the stakeholders and others can actually go, see what's there, understand it, share information, and really inform themselves, so that what we ultimately end up with in a consensus is an informed consensus. The other 2 steps of the vision process, as I said, looking at the finance side, what public-private money is available to carry out a plan, and then actually doing the plan and coming up with very realistic A to B to C implementable steps that our partner communities can take, and we can help them take those steps if needs be. So how does this play out on the ground? Here's a simple case that we did it turned out to be not quite so simple, in the Penobscot Valley. 12 towns got together. Their council of governments came to TPL along with a local land trust and said, would you help us put together a regional plan? We don't think it's possible, but we'd like to try. This is the first time that they've done anything like this in the area, but they thought that this vision process and the Greenprint could actually help them get there. This is, the right-hand side shows the area that we were dealing with in Maine. The left-hand side really essentially shows the process. A couple of things here we did somewhat differently. We always look at what data information planning has already been done. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. So we want to start with the best thinking that's already on the ground, update that where necessary, and really understand where the data and the analysis has already been done. In this one, we also, because it was 12 different communities, did a public telephone survey so that we wouldn't go in blind to what the priorities were likely to be. Although, as it turns out, the priority areas, there are about a dozen of them that tend to come up, and certainly was the case here. And then once Once we'd done that, we put together a steering committee, the leadership group, the council of governments, the local land trust, the people we knew would stick with us till the end and had a vested interest in making this happen. They helped us pick the stakeholders. We got the stakeholders together. They helped us pick the technical advisory council. And then we were off and running and had stakeholder workshops and public listening sessions. And the first thing that we wanted to know is, what are the things you care about? What are the things that you care about? And what they came up with were 6 different conservation goals: habitat, scenic values, working landscapes, farms, protecting water quality, public access and recreation, and trails. So those were the 6 areas that we were going to have to figure out how to prioritize in coming up with an eventual work plan. What was interesting for us, of course, is that when people, there was a broad diversity of how people looked at those different values, and we came up with an interesting puzzle that we don't always see, which which I'll speak to in a minute. We then, once we had those goals, we didn't disappear, but we went away for about 3 months, and that's normally what it takes, to assemble the data, put together the maps, so that we had a map showing, parcel by parcel, showing how each parcel ranked for each one of those goals. So if you will, we had 6 different maps that somehow we would have to pull together to come up with an ultimate consensus-based design to move ahead. And once we were able to bring those maps back to the community, we then had, and that's why I'm wearing this special little orange thing around my neck, we had a process where we use keypads which we give to community members and stakeholders in these meetings, and they're actually able to vote real time on their priorities. So if there are 6 different priority areas, they rank them 1 to 6. And that shows up as a summary graph, and it also goes right into ArcGIS and creates a sample map that reflects those group weightings. So it's a wonderful opportunity for people to see what the implications are of what they want to see in the future, either it's habitat or water quality or whatever. There's also a very cool tool that's available. That's a swipe tool that allows you to have layers of scenarios, and you can take your mouse and just move it down the map, and it peels away the top layer, and then you see another scenario sitting underneath. And it's really helpful for communities as they try to wrestle with what the implications are for their priorities. In this instance, two different sets of priorities, rural and urban, and they really emerge distinctly. And rather than try to get to the lowest common denominator or force a compromise, we said, doesn't make sense. In fact, one of the stakeholders said, well, why don't we just do it differently in the urban area than the rural area? Aha. And as you can see, the rural folks cared more about habitat, scenic values, and ag land, and the folks in the city cared more about trails, recreation, and water quality, as well as habitat. And so we ended up with a composite map, and here are the 6 different maps. Again, red are the high resource, important high resource lands. And the final result was a map, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's sort of a green central area that's kind of the urban corridor that has a different set of priorities and therefore different values within that. And that was the consensus going through this whole process that people arrived at that allowed us to then move from there to the other stages of visioning, the financial work as well as the action plan. But this was the design that those 12 communities wanted to see for their landscape for the future. Way better than the normal reactive process. Now, of course, being in the real estate side of things, we also looked at land availability, developability of property, and a host of other things that didn't come into the normal run of those 6 different priorities, but it also allowed us to provide input on strategically what made the most sense in terms of priorities. Once we'd done that, we put it up on an interactive mapping site so that the community was able to go in, as well as the stakeholders, really see what was up there, understand, change the weights around so that they could play with different sets of priorities, password protected access to parcel by parcel information for the people who needed that, but not for the general public. They were also able to use the site to print maps. 3 of the towns are off and running right now in terms of land conservation, trying to take advantage of this down real estate market, very much using the work that was done as part of this green printing process. And then we produced a final plan, as we do with every green print.